Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Today we'll talk about nourishing the Bhakti garden. So the word Bhakti, roughly translated in English, means devotion. Devotion for whom? For the Supreme. And there's a very particular definition of the Supreme given in the Bhakti scriptures. Most succinctly, it is the Supreme is that from whom everything else emanates, source of everything. And that means God includes everything and has all features that are within our purview, as well as those which are beyond our purview as well. Therefore, the definition that from which everything emanates is more clearly defined in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very important bhakti scripture, which says that there are basically three features of the Supreme. The verse in Sanskrit, Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. That verse, which I just quoted from the Srimad Bhagavatam, lists the three features of the Supreme Absolute Truth, which is the impersonal feature, which means the effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a localized feature, which means that God resides within everyone's heart in a personal way. And then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's the fountainhead of everything else and all other features, who's originally a person, but not a material person like I'm used to. That is, that there's a way in which sometimes when one says that God has a personal aspect. Thank you. These are flowers offered to our deities, so as a way to welcome the speaker, they put these flowers around my neck. It's not, you don't get flowers every day here in Northern California, put around your neck. Usually Hawaii. If I wear these to the airport, people say, "Are you coming from Honolulu, eh?" No, from the Hare Krishna temple. So, where was I? Yeah, so three features of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Oh, and oftentimes people say, well, if you say that God has a personal form, then you're limiting. How can you say God's personal? There's a modern understanding of God, more modern, that says that God is an impersonal spirit. He's featureless. And this is concluded by looking at this world and seeing that it's temporary, and that there's suffering in this world. There are limitations to our relationships, to what we can do physically and so on, and we have form. And therefore, if one says God has form, that means you're limiting God. You're saying you're trying to impose on him some anthropomorphic idea that he's the same as us, and so forth. But the Bhakti scriptures give a completely different conception of the form of God, and they say it's unlimited form. And I mean, how can form be unlimited? It doesn't have the same limitations that my form has. As an example, the form of God, the senses of God are not limited. I can see only with my eyes, taste with my tongue, and so forth. But he can see with his feet, or taste with his hands, or with his ears, and so forth. His senses are interchangeable. And he is described as that that his form is all-pervading. So how is it all-pervading? There's a story given in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Krishna who is called up by his mother, Yashoda, for these are the playful activities of God mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhakti section, which describe how his mother has some rumor that he's eaten dirt. So she calls him and says, and to scold him, you've eaten dirt. And he said, no, they're lying. I never ate dirt. He says, so open your mouth. She opens his mouth. He opens his mouth and his mother looks inside and sees the entire universe and everything else, all material elements, the entire cosmos, including herself, sitting there with her child on the lap. And then within that image, there's another extended image of another universe, and then of Mother Yashoda with Krishna on her lap, and so forth. And so he's unlimitedly dimensional. We can experience several dimensions in this world, but the scriptures describe him as unlimitedly dimensional. So he's in all places at all times. And at the same time, according to the Bhagavad Gita, he has his individual form. So the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bhed Tattva, which means that God is simultaneously one and different, inconceivably, simultaneously one and different from his energies. He's the source of all energies, but he's one with the energies, but different at the same time. Just like the sun emanates heat and light, and the heat and light are part of the sun, but we can't say they are the sun. They are a part of the sun. So similarly, Krishna has multifarious energies that emanate from him, which he manifests, and he's simultaneously one and different from his energies. So one of those energies is the living entity. That is, sometimes we say the soul, in Sanskrit called the jiva. Jiva means life. So there's according to Bhakti scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, a categorical difference between matter and spirit. And that's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna names the material elements. Bhumir apo analo vayu kamano bhudir eva cha ahankara ityame bina prakritirashada. That's earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. Gross and subtle elements that make up, for instance, this body. The body's made of material elements, and Krishna describes those as binna, or separated energies, my separated energies. Then he says, aparayema tastvanyam prakritim vidime param jivam bhutam mahabahoya yedam daryate jagat. That besides this inferior energy, which is, we say, the material energy or the separated energy, the elements I just mentioned, there's a superior energy which is the living entity. And that living entity is consciousness. And that conscious living entity animates the body. Later on in the Gita, Krishna then gives his definition of knowledge, and that is when the living entity, that is, I am a living entity, I am a soul, it's not that I have a soul, but I am a soul. When I become conscious of the difference between me and the body in which I reside, he says, this is called knowledge. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetri shubharata kshetra kshetrajnoyo jnanam yatach jnanam matam mama. So kshetra means a field. So the body is described as a field of activity. And there's the knower of the field. Gya means to know, just like in our modern English we have the word know, which comes from the Sanskrit jna originally, which to become aware of something. So kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi, when one becomes aware of the difference between oneself and the kshetra, or the body, or the field, this is called knowledge. And in other sections of the Gita, to give us some objectivity, Krishna describes the body as a city city of 9 gates. Navadware. Dwar means a gate or an opening or a door. And Navadware, city of 9 gates. Nava is 9. So, what are the 9 gates? These various openings we have on the body that allow information to come in. But we're different from the city or the field. And then Krishna gives a hierarchy, a definition of various elements, and says one's higher than the next. So he says, Indriyani priyanyahur indriyabhya param manaha manasastu parabhudir yo budhe paratastu saha. And that is that lowest of all are the senses. Above the senses is the mind. Above the mind is the intelligence. And above the intelligence is the soul proper. Indriyani priyanyahur. And one who engages in the process of yoga develops the ability to control the lower self by the higher self and see the difference between oneself and the indriyas, or the senses, or the mind, or the intellect even, which are instruments through which we take information and process and interpret it. So there's plenty of description of the difference between the soul and the body in the scripture. And then what is the definition of the soul in relationship with the Supreme? So we're the same qualitatively as Krishna, but quantitatively we're different. That is, we're minute and he's infinite. We're infinitesimal and he's infinite. So the relationship is just like the fire and the spark from the fire. And the spark has the same quality as the fire, but it's different in quantity. If the spark moves away from the fire and lands somewhere, it will be affected by its environment, as we are affected by our environment. So in that sense, the soul is also described as tatastha. Tatastha means marginal. The living entity, soul, can associate with either the lower material energy or with spiritual energy. And we develop the qualities of the environment we associate with. So in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Purusha prakritisto hi bhunte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. That because of my association, because of one's association with various modes of nature, one develops those qualities and takes on a certain mode of life. And he says also that these are because of my association and because of the qualities that I assume, through that association, I achieve higher and lower positions in this world. And that is not just in this life, but obviously there's a description, it's referring to the continuum, because the soul, although in one present in this body now, the soul is eternal and is merely a traveler moving from one body to the next, according to the quality of his consciousness. And this is described in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, who says, Yang yang vapi smaran bhavam tajat yante kalevaram tam tami vaitakonteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. That the soul residing in the body will come to a point of giving up this present body. It's called death. Death means that the body is no longer useful and is no longer inhabitable, and therefore the soul moves on. Yang vapi smaran bhavam tajatyante. Tajatyante kalevaram. Kalevaram means the body. So tajatyante, at the end, when one gives up the body. This is an important topic, which tends to get neglected. It's taboo, really, to talk about death, actually. And I mentioned several times a book I read recently by Ernest Becker, a psychologist, called Denial of Death, in which he describes how most of the things that people do in their lives are ways in which to ignore the inevitable fact that they have to die. But Krishna talks about it. What is it? Demystifies the process. Yang vapi smaranda bhavam tajatyante kalevaram. At the end, when you give up the body, the present body, what is the where do you go? What happens next? Well, he says, yang vapi smaran bhavam. Whatever kind of, what is your composite feeling you've developed over your lifetime called bhava, the predominant emotion that you have because of the way in which you've associated in your life. That will be a predominant force of determining your next destination. So it's a custom fit, it's not random. The idea of transmigration in the soul, sometimes called reincarnation. In some sense, it's misunderstood. I know when I grew up, there was a television program called My Mother the Car. Nobody in here is old enough to know that. Yeah, you know My Mother the Car? Thank you, Michael. We're keeping you. My Mother the Car. It was, there was some idea about reincarnation, but it was sort of considered to be very archaic and sort of ludicrous to consider it. So the man's mother had died, and so she reincarnates as a car, and he has this relation. That's what the show. It was a comedy, and his mother was living through the car, and so forth. So anyway, there's always been some idea that there's reincarnation because it's misunderstood. There's no a real clear description of what's going on, and so forth. People would speculate about various ways in which somebody might reincarnate as this or that. But in the Gita, Krishna talks about how the consciousness is affected by the environment, and at the time of death, we're carried by the force of that consciousness. I mean, there are higher powers involved, but basically the intense desires of the living entity are being fulfilled by material nature, almost automatically. So he says, Shariram yaravatnoti yachchap yukramatishvara drihit vaitani samyati vayur gandham ivashayat. So vayur gandham ivashayat means that just as the air carries aroma, if air crosses a flower garden, you'll smell something heavenly. If it crosses another body of something else, that you might be repulsed and so forth. So it picks up that quality by its association. So he says, the soul, the essential spiritual spark, who's part of God, conscious living entity, mixed up with the material nature, then associates in various ways, and his consciousness takes on a certain kind of aroma, so to speak. And because of that, because of the force of that consciousness, then he says, Shotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam grahanam cha adishtayam manaschayam vishayan upasevate. There's a way in which one acquires another kshetra, another body, another city with gates in it, and not necessarily a human body. It can be any body according to the force of the consciousness. And he mentions Shotram, Chakshu, Sparshanam Cha, that there's a nose, ear, eyes, All these are the senses he's naming, and they're custom built specifically to accommodate the cumulative effect of the person's activities and their consciousness at the time they leave the previous body. And one carries with one the subtle body. So there are two physical bodies. One is the gross material body made of earth, water, fire, and then there's an air. And then there's a subtle body called mind, intelligence, ego. And one can even experience the difference between the gross and the subtle body during dreams at night. It's like you lie down on the bed, or you can watch somebody else lie down, and they may be experiencing running a marathon, or running from a tiger, or from the IRS, or anything while they're sleeping, and they may be moving, even animals you can see, going through various motions. And they may be experiencing these things, but they're detached from their physical body. They're not even aware of their physical body. They leave the car running, but they're off somewhere else. So the gross material body is going on practically automatically. Like right now, we're all breathing. I say I'm breathing, but I'm not actually breathing. I'm being breathed, because you can't stop breathing. I mean, try it. You'll be forced to keep breathing, and your heart goes on beating involuntarily as well. And all the digestion that you've done today, hopefully, has been done automatically. And this body is a very sophisticated machine. So one takes on another apparatus, so to speak, and it is named an apparatus, or a yantra, machine. It's mechanical. It's a bio-machine. That's why we eat biofuel every day. And we're traveling from one body to the next in the material world. So what is the idea of salvation? And how does that occur? So there has to be intervention in this process, because I'm in ignorance and I'm moving from one body to the next. The prayer I spoke at the beginning of the class, Oma Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. It says, I'm born into ignorance. And that's a fact. I don't know where I came from. I have no idea where my last body was. Or even if I don't believe in transmigration from one body to the next, I still have no idea where it came from. I would have to take the word of some higher authority, like some scripture, or someone else that I would have faith in to say, this is where you came from. But I can't ascertain for myself. I can't see where I came from. I'm in ignorance. I assume a certain personality in this life based on the circumstances. When I'm born, I come out as a fairly nondescript person. I'm just a baby, and a male or female, obviously, but that's about it. And then I assume a certain personality because I have parents, and they slap a name tag on me. They say, here's your new name. And 2 minutes ago, I didn't have that name, but now I'm awarded a new name, and so forth. In a family, now here's your family tree, and here are the obligations of your culture, and so forth. And psychologically, I then adapt to all these things, and I start a new life. And I become absorbed in this particular drama that I'm in this very limited amount of time that I have in this next life. So this can go on perpetually unless there's an intervention, unless there's knowledge that comes from a higher source, from outside the system, which is rather automatic. Once one's within the process of this transmigration, moving from one body to the next, and is being awarded various bodies because of one's association with the material nature. I need some help from outside. So, and Krishna, God, is benevolent. He's all-powerful and all-merciful. So his intention is to give everyone an opportunity. The purpose of the world is to give everyone an opportunity to come back to the spiritual world, which is actually our home. Shastra says, Shastra means scripture. We say Shastra, which is an interesting word in Sanskrit because it comes from the root word shas, which means, when you say Shastra, it means scripture. You have to follow that in order to become disentangled. And it also means Shastra. It can be pronounced differently. Shastra, which means a weapon, like a sword. So if you don't follow Shastra, you get the Shastra. Meaning that without following some guideline from higher authority, then you have to suffer the consequences. So, coming from, so the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhakti scriptures, the Vedas teach that the purpose of the creation is to, twofold actually. One is to give an opportunity to living entities to enjoy the material nature. And the other is to give them an opportunity to come back to the spiritual world, which is our actual home, which I just said. But I didn't mention the twofold. And the reason is that Krishna has given free will to the soul, to the living entity. God gives free will to the living entity. So it's impossible to have love by force. And therefore, Krishna gives every opportunity for the soul to hear about him, to learn about him, and come back to Godhead. But he doesn't impose his will on the soul. It has to be voluntary, otherwise there's no love. To that end, he sends representatives to this world, great teachers who awaken people to knowledge that they're different from this body, they're different from this material world. Even great thinkers, Socrates, Plato, in the Republic talks about how this material world, this universe that we're in, is like a cave, and we're cave dwellers, and that there's a small fire burning in the cave, and then a screen, and then there's some puppet show. Have you ever done hand puppets in front of one of those cameras? Those images are on the wall, and people are staring at that. They're sitting in a dark cave, but there's a little bit of light coming from some flame, and then the images on the wall are taken as the reality. And he describes how it would be very difficult to come to somebody who's been in that cave since a time immemorial and describe that there's a world outside. They become attached to this conception that this is everything, and they don't want to come out. And even describing what the light is like, or what the variety in the outside world is like, would seem fantastical to such a person. And therefore, there's a very gradual process of introducing them to this outside world of light and so forth. In any case, there are ways in which Krishna comes himself. There are many different teachers that come to the world to introduce this knowledge. And therefore, going back to the prayer I said at the beginning of class, Om Jnana Timirandasya, I'm blinded by ignorance. My eyes are closed. But my teacher has given me the shalakaya. It's like when you go to the eye doctor and there's an ointment he can give you that will actually cure your eyes, cure your blindness, and then you can see. So that's the idea. So there's a way in which the soul who's in ignorance, who's wandering in the material world, wandering implies that if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. There's no real idea. I mean, I may have an idea in this lifetime, but I don't see the overall predicament that I'm in. And therefore, for instance, the scriptures come along and they direct us that this is not your home. There's a world of light. You have another existence, eternal existence, a relationship with the Supreme Person in the spiritual world and so forth. And when souls come in contact with those who are lovers of God, according to our Bhakti scriptures, the most powerful way that is introduced, one comes in contact with those who already have love for God. And there's a indelible effect from that association. Just as I'm affected by my environment in this world, I become affected by my association with those who love God. And those who love God have a way of moving in this world, although it may seem similar as a normal person who's on the track of material progress. Their intention is completely different. And not only that, the vibration they make is different. People who are attached to God, who love God, speak about Him, sing about Him, and so forth. And so, according to the Bhakti scriptures, the most potent way to be introduced or to begin one's path back to the spiritual world is to come in contact with somebody who's already experiencing that love, who's already, although in this world is not of it, is not connected or interested or has no intention of staying in this world. Their entire being is invested in loving God and worshiping God and so forth. So by contact with these kinds of souls who walk in the world, one poetically it's described by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a teacher 500 years ago who came to teach the path of bhakti, compared it to a gardener or a garden, the bhakti garden, and that is that the seed is planted in my heart. I come in contact with a bhakti gardener and he or she plants the seed in my heart. This is called the Bhakti Lata Bij. So bij means a seed. And that seed then, as we know, seeds are very miraculous. And they can sit for long periods of time, and then as soon as the water touches them, they activate, and they come alive, and they start, I mean, they're already alive, but they begin to manifest their potency, and they'll grow. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, by watering the seed of bhakti, which is planted in the heart, it grows, and how far can it grow? It can actually penetrate the universe, this material universe. The bhakti creeper grows through all the coverings of this universe, which are vast, and enters into the light of the spiritual world, and there begins its own, it attaches itself. He poetically describes how the creeper of devotional service, the seed grows into a creeper. And creepers are very interesting. I have several around in my garden. They feel things, like the creeper was near this pole, like start to wrap itself around the pole. It has some sense that, oh, I've got something here. They look around everywhere and they grab something, and then they start wrapping their vine around. So similarly, the bhakti creeper grows into the spiritual world and finds Krishna there, and he says, wraps itself around Krishna's lotus feet. And then the person, although living in this world, has a connection to the spiritual world and begins to develop one's relationship with the Supreme. And this means that although one's working and living and breathing in this world, there's a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead going on in the spiritual world. So, in a practical way, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer given way, whatever austerities you perform in this life, just do it for me. Do it as an offering to me. Arpanam, he says. Arpanam means a kind of offering that you make to a superior. So he said, Yat koroshi yat ashnashi yat johosi dadasi yat tapasvasti konteya tat kurushva manarpanam. Yat karoshi, whatever you do, karoshi means to work or act, whatever work you're already doing in this world, he's saying, begin to connect it to me. Offer it to me. Yat koroshi yat ashnashi yat johosi, whatever work you do, whatever offerings you make, whatever you eat, all these things, give it to me. So this is a beginning, preliminary stage that helps one to make advancement on the spiritual path, according to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. It's not the highest level of offering, because I'm doing what I like already, what I already am doing. I now offer to the Supreme afterwards. Here's the result, I give it to you. This helps one to become detached from one's work and to develop knowledge. And then gradually one becomes intrigued with the idea of surrender to God. And whatever His idea is, I'll do that. The direct process of devotional service is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning with Shravanam. Shravanam means to hear. So simply to hear about God. And then Kirtanam, to speak or sing about God. And there are unlimited things to say. So those things lead to Smaranam, or remembering God. And this is the direct process of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Hearing, chanting, and then remembering. And then there are other aspects like praying and worshiping and so forth. So these are all called Shravanadi Jal. Shravana means hearing, Adi means and all the other things we just mentioned, and Jal means water, Agwa, Swe, Pani, Omisu. Omizu. Any other languages? Huh? I said Pani. Jal, I said. Shravanadi Jal. Japanese, Omisu. Huh? Ab. Swe is Mandarin. Pani is Hindi. No Europeans in here? Nidu? 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 Okay. Many names for water. So in Bengali, Jal. So Shravanadi Jal. So Shravanadi Jal means that this is like water. And you can water the bhakti seed in your heart by this hearing and chanting. It's simply by hearing and chanting that one begins to water the seed. And then it'll grow. So how do you do that? Well, you can chant the names of God. So there are many, many names of God. Lord Chaitanya taught this simple system that everyone can take to in this age. It doesn't matter what religious background you come from or what culture, because everyone has some idea of the Supreme, that there is a supreme source of everything, a supreme divine source. I mean, even the atheists have that idea. Otherwise, how are they atheists? They got to be against. They have to. God has to be there to be against them in the first place. So there's this idea that there's some source, there's some divine cause to everything, and when one has there are names for this supreme divine cause, even if one's not completely clear about who he is. I mean, it's better if you are. The more information that you have about somebody, the more you can develop your attachment and love for them. The more you get to know someone. However, the name of God has potency, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, spiritual power. Nam nam akari bahuda nidya sarva shaktis. So he said, there are unlimited names of God, and all these names of God have power, spiritual power. And what kind of power? Nidya, personal, God's personal power is there within the name. So this is a big revelation that the name of God is absolute. Therefore, the method of connection, religio, how to connect, yoga, which also means the same thing, huge, how to connect with the Supreme, is simplified in this age of Kali Yuga, the present age, is simply by chanting the names of God. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Or Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh. Other names, please. Allah Akbar, huh? What? Lord? God? Kami-sama. It's not really a name for God in Japanese, but they call him Kami-sama. Yeah. So, many names for God, and we know, anyway, simply by saying these names, then one can water that seed of devotion within one's heart, and it begins to grow. So those who are interested in advancing on spiritual life develop a practice of regularly repeating the names of God. To that end, there are many ways of counting and measuring how one is doing this in a regulated way. So one of the ways is on a rosary, which I just happen to have in my bag. Every culture has some rosary. It's every culture, every human culture. Well, there are no necessarily animal cultures. This is a kind of a rosary with 108 beads on it, and each bead is an opportunity to say the name of God and then count it. So one way you can start your day is to measure the number of times you say the names of God and experience the power of the name for yourself. So, for instance, well, this bag, it's just so it makes it easier to carry the beads around. But I have my fingers on the beads. I'll show you, like this. So the thumb and middle finger. This finger isn't used because astrologically it's a bad finger. So it has to stay outside the bag like this. That's how these bags are designed. So you can start your day by repeating the name of God and experiencing for yourself what these personal powers in the name are. You have to experience it for yourself. Otherwise, it's a useless waste of time to take to some religious process unless you're getting something from it. It's actually forbidden in all the scriptures to take up the process of religion without actually seeking God or getting some taste from it yourself. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told us, if you're humble, if you accept humility in your life, and you become tolerant, and you also learn to give respect to others and not expect respect in return, and then you chant the names of God, then you'll experience something very profound, and you'll want to go on saying the names. And that will water that seed of bhakti within your heart, and it'll grow. And it'll grow so far, it'll go outside the universe. And you'll experience your real spiritual identity eventually. So the way I would chant this mantra, by the way, which I mentioned, this is called the Maha Mantra. It comes from the Vedas, and it comes from the Kali Santarana Upanishad, which says that in this age of Kali, by chanting this particular mantra, you can cross over all the difficulties of the age. You can actually become liberated. But beyond that, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and taught the mantra, and he infused it with Krishna Prema. So not only by chanting these names does one get liberation, but also develops love for God, which is the ultimate goal of the practice of bhakti. So here it is. One can sit down by oneself. It's nice if you're around others who are chanting too, but you can chant by yourself. I just had a friend of mine staying at my house who's a longtime practitioner of bhakti. And I came in to see him in the morning, and he was sitting there with his beads. He had really big beads too. And he was just sitting there chanting. And when I looked at him, I thought, well, that's really nice. I think I'll go try it too. Because I saw him, and it just looked so nice that he's just sitting there with nothing else on his mind, nothing else to do except repeat the names of God. And he had them on the beads. Aesthetically, it was a very pleasing scene. And so you would take a bead between these two fingers like this, and then repeat the mantra. We're recommending the Hare Krishna mantra. That's the one up on the screen. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. There are three names in this mantra: Hare, Krishna, and Rama. These are all very special names of God, and very intimate names of God. And the prayer altogether, it forms a prayer which means, "Oh my Lord, oh energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service." We're not asking anything. We're not saying, I want a car, I want a house, I want to be healthy, I want something like this. The idea is just let me serve you. This is my eternal occupation, to become a servant of God, that I am a servant of God. I've diverted that service in various ways, and therefore I'm dissatisfied. But as soon as one redirects one's serving propensity to the Supreme, then there's satisfaction. This is haitukia pratyata, yayatmas suprasidati, that one feels satisfaction upon offering unmotivated service to God, uninterrupted as well. Would you like to try a little chanting? Yeah, you can take some beads. Everyone can take some beads. And you hold it, you use your right hand and hold between the thumb and the middle finger like this, and then you can roll the bead. Now, on top, you'll see a bead with a little bit of a tuft on it, or a little extra string. This is called the head bead or the Krishna bead. So besides that head bead, there are 108 beads. So don't chant on the head bead. You go around it, or you go to it and then go back. So, for instance, I would start here with the bead right next to the Krishna bead, and then I would progress by saying the mantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then I move to the next bead dexterously. Did you see that? Move to the next bead, and then as I chant another mantra, I move to the next bead. And in this way, there's a hand-mind cooperation, coordination, and I can concentrate on one mantra at a time and lose count, let my fingers count all the way through. Now, imagine I'm chanting a mantra on every bead. Don't do this at home. And then you come all the way to the other side, come all the way to the other side, and you're on the head bead, and you've come all the way ahead. Now I turn around. It's like at a swimming pool. You know, see the Olympics? They turn around and they go back the other way. So I turn around and I go back the other way. It fakes out the mind too, because I thought we were just there. You know, it's like, just calm down, we're chanting. And you just keep going around and around. Now, someone might say, what's this all about? Well, in the Bhakti scriptures, I mukta kaleru pasyamanam, that all the liberated souls, they're attached to this chanting of God's names. This is what liberated souls do. Non-liberated souls have to go to Home Depot, otherwise known as hell. So, yeah, lost in Home Depot forever. Unless you chant, then you can go to the spiritual world. So there's chanting. So we'll try chanting a little bit in unison, this mantra together, the Hare Krishna mantra. You can observe it on the board up here. And just follow along and move your fingers from one beat to the next as you chant, and just listen to the sound. So this is the kind of meditation we're doing. We're listening to the sound of the names that we're uttering with our own tongue. And if you want to add something to it, before we start, imagine yourself, think back a few years to when you were a baby, and think how helpless that you were, that you had no other recourse other than to call out for your mother, for everything. I think I'm independent now, but I'm actually in the same situation. I'm as helpless as a baby, practically. For all intents and purposes, I can be taken out of this world at any time. Anything can disrupt the reality that I've conceived of for myself here in this world and so forth. And I'm actually utterly helpless. If my digestion stops, if my heart stops, if my hand stops working, I have not a lot to say about it. Neither does the doctor, frankly. If you go to a doctor and say, "Can you fix this?" He'll say, "I try, I don't even know what you have. You better go see a few more people." And after you do, someone will say, "We think you have this, and can you cure it?" Well, maybe we'll try. So there's no security in this world. So take yourself into this position of being a little baby, and that you're helpless, and see that you're breathing, but you're dependent on this breathing process that's being supplied, and the intelligence that you're getting to do anything that's also coming to you from a higher source. So think about how we're receiving grace at every moment, and in gratitude, appreciation for how we're being maintained, and all the wonders that are bestowed upon us at every second, the very miracle that we're alive and in this body. Think of that, and then chant as if you're connecting to the Supreme Source, the Supreme Cause of all causes, Krishna, who's maintaining you. And just call out like that in a simple way, like a baby would cry out for its mother. Shall we start? Yes. So I'll say one mantra first that helps to clear all the impediments to chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. So first, just repeat after me. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadadhara, Shivasari Gaura, Bhakta Vrinda. And now in unison, let's try chanting on the beats. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that kind of chanting is known as japa. You can chant just loud enough so that you can hear yourself. We chanted a little bit louder today, so it's a little more like kirtan. But when you do your personal practice, you can chant like that. And then we can also do kirtan for 2 minutes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, everybody. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kids, come on. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare. Hare. Go Premanande, Kai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Tai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.